Hello, everyone, and welcome from India and the US. I can see a lot of participants. So, good evening to everyone in India, and good morning to those rising and shining for Christine in the US. I'm Kaveri Singhji, and I welcome you to Culture Ring's Vicarious Exploration series. The customary announcement before we start: this webinar is being hosted on Zoom, and it's also being streamed live on Facebook. It's being recorded so that people can watch at their convenience, and all attendees have been muted by default. So if anyone has a question, please post in the Q&A section, and we will definitely come to it during the course of today. Now, I guess to get started, for more than a decade, Culture Rings has specialized in delivering mind-blowing, immersive experiences, helping you discover lands far and wide and their secret treasures. The corona pandemic lockdown does not stop us from beaming you out of wherever you are to places far and wide so that you can continue to discover the world with us vicariously. The greatest benefits of being in our line of work is that we get to make friends with some amazing, open-minded, seasoned travelers. And that's where we have what we have today. Your pilot for the vicarious journey through Gujarat is one such beautiful person that came to us with her heart and mind wide open, thirsty for new adventures and new discoveries. And I'd like to introduce you to you. Many of you are already her friends and are here because of her. Christine. Christine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a brief introduction before we start the slides. My name is Gibbons Nigida, and I work for Astra Zeneca. And with Astra Zeneca, over the last 5 years, I had the opportunity to travel to India. I received a connection to Culture Rings via another traveler I met at a hotel. And I reached out to Kaveri, and I participated in an adventure in the local Bangalore region. And since then, I've been traveling with Kaveri every time I come to India. And I've never been disappointed. And certainly this trip was the same. It was quite a memorable experience, and I'm pleased to be able to share it with everybody today. So, Kaveri, can we start with the slides? And perhaps
maybe before we even start, I had a couple of questions for you about you. You know, because there are viewers here who know you, and then there are others who don't. And this journey that you're going to be sharing, I think it would be interesting for people to know what kind of a person you are, what makes you happy, what do you do for a living, you know, things like that, so that they can also assess whether this is something for them. So maybe I can ask you, are you someone who travels a lot around the world with your work?
Well, I have to say that my interest in travel and different cultures started at an early age. I am an Army brat. So actually, I had no memory of the US for the first 12, 13 years of my life. We lived in Europe and we lived in South Korea. So my parents took us out of school and we traveled around the world and had the experience of many different cultures. And then finally, I ended up on a border city and then living in a culture that was not my own for the remainder of my formative years. I will say that one of the things that my father taught me at a very young age that has kept with me on all my travels, he said to me as a child that I was a guest in people's countries, and that I needed to behave like a guest. I was in their home. And I think I've taken that mindset with me wherever I go, to be respectful, to be open-minded, to not compare, and just enjoy the experience and the people and their lives as best that I can. So I certainly needed to do that on this trip because I certainly was experiencing some very different cultures.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, when was your first time to India?
My first time to India was approximately 2014, 2015.
Okay, and that's when we first met, right?
Yes, yes.
Great. And what made you want to get, so you work with AstraZeneca, right? The Swedish
Yes,
pharmaceutical
yes.
company. What made you want to get out of your office and obviously a very comfortable hotel they must have put you up in?
Yeah. So again, I always found India very, very interesting, and certainly my colleagues in India had a lot to do with it. They love their country, and I wanted to understand a bit more. And as I traveled in the Bangalore region and fell in love with India, I always like to describe India as kind of looking through a kaleidoscope. Every time you look through, there's something more wonderful and beautiful to see, sights and sounds and colors and whatnot. And so, but I really knew that India, like the US, is very diverse and there's a lot to see. So I wanted the opportunity then to go beyond the Bangalore region and expand my experience with the country.
So is this trip for everyone who has a corporate job and travels to India?
No, I would definitely not say that this particular trip is that. I think this is a trip, if you will, if you can liken a trip that maybe Anthony Bourdain would have gone on. This is more of an adventurous trip. It is not one of luxury, although there was a one point at the end of my trip when I stayed at the Black Buck Lodge, which is, I was highlighted in Condé Nast, and it was certainly a beautiful, beautiful experience. But the remainder of the trip was really adventuresome. It's dusty, but it was so memorable and such an opportunity.
Wonderful. So now I guess people can't wait for you to get started. So I have the pictures coming up. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. So these are actually a couple of stock photos. So I began my trip by arriving in Ahmedabad, which is a major metropolitan city in the state of Gujarat. You know, I was greeted by my host at Utelia Palace by his son and his driver. And so there was a lot of dialogue going on, so I didn't really get any pictures. But I think this gives you an idea of what the city would look like. It's on the banks of the Sabarmati River, and you can see they have a beautiful river walk along the side. And so the highway travels along the river. Next slide. The sights and sounds are very different than what I was used to in Bangalore, which is a very metropolitan, if you will, high-tech region. So here there were camels. You certainly got the sense that you were in northern India. So then the next slide is there were a lot of monkeys and things like that that were also, that you would see that I didn't normally see in Bangalore. Next slide. So leaving the city, we started off on a two-lane highway, and certainly these are some of the sights that you would see along the drive to Utelia Palace. Next. So I was then arrived at Utelia Palace. I think I have some pictures of it high on a hill surrounded by a very quaint Indian village. There are no paved roads. The village is, if I have to say if there was one word that described the Utelia village and the palace, is the word tranquil. I certainly felt a sense of peace that I probably have never experienced in my life before. Absolute silence, only the sounds of birds and the steps of the people walking around the palace. This is, just to give you a little bit of background, this palace was built in 1786. And it was a replacement of a wooden palace, and it has like European influences and features like 5 domes, pillared galleries, balconies, and porticos. But the bedrooms are also furnished with period furniture. So this was my room, extremely comfortable and very large, and I really enjoyed the sanctuary of that room. It was right off, if you go to the previous slide, the palace has long hallways, and the doors are right off of that. So as you open up your bedroom door, you're stepping out to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's move forward a couple of slides. One more, okay. So, and we'll be showing you some videos. Unfortunately, we couldn't do those side by side, but I had the opportunity then, my host, Prince Bagrati, he allowed me a Bhagaraf. Thank you. He assigned a guide, if you will, to take me to a local Parthal village. And so this village is a village of a bird catchers clan or tribe. And so I was able to tour the tribe and was allowed to go into some of the homes. And this is an example of one of the homes that I was allowed to go into. And next slide, please. So you can see this is their bed. It's right outside on a little patio, and that they share with the animals. Next. I will say I always felt welcome as I was going through the villages, and I think one of the most memorable things about India, all of India, is the smiles on the faces of the people that will greet you. You always feel a sense of welcome and interest. The people do live very close to their animals, and so here we have an example of the water buffalo, which are so integral to their lifestyle. Next.
Yeah, so I guess in the summers, people also sleep out and their animals are also out. So when you wake up in the morning, you could have the face of a buffalo right next to you, right?
For sure. Next. And here's a woman just sorting grain. This is, I will equate this for those of you in the US, next slide, is like a 7-Eleven, right? So here's a little shop where people in the village would come and pick up some of their needs, daily needs. And then again, walk through the village. This was on the way to the chief's house, who had a very kind of luxurious home.
The chief of the village?
The chief of the village, and I have some slides. I had the opportunity to sit down with him in his home and share some chai.
Oh, that's you.
There you go. So I was invited into his home, and we had tea together, which was quite an experience.
Are you on his bed?
No, this is, so typically when you have chai, you sit on the floor, and chai is not served in a traditional cup, but on a little saucer that you drink from.
Wow. So the tea comes in a saucer. It's not like you transfer it to a saucer and then drink.
Yes.
That's amazing. I didn't have that experience when I traveled. I missed meeting the chief.
So let's just scroll through a couple of the slides. These are just images of the village itself. We went into an area of the village here where it's much more crowded, and I will show you a video later on. People are living, the walls are shared, one room, and people do their living outside. And here you have somebody doing their washing and cooking, and they're sleeping outside. It's much more a crowded portion, more urban portion of the village. Next slide. Again, just sights and sounds of the people in the village.
That skirt that she's wearing.
Yes.
So there are so many, I think there are 17 different major tribes and more than 100 minor tribes in Gujarat. And the way they dress actually give away which tribe or subcaste they might be coming from. So this particular dressing, I think the way she's dressed is very typical of Parhat. And this is not actually traditional in the sense of more than 100 years old. Because if you see the prints on her clothes, they're very modern and they are digitally printed. They're not hand printed, or it's not even hand woven. This is the modern signature dressing of their tribe.
Next slide. And here is just on the way back, I took an image of the Utelia Palace on the top of the hill. So the next day, I had the opportunity to take a little Jeep ride. And this is my host, I'll call him his man Friday, if you will, who joined us on this adventure. That day, we were to visit the Jat tribe, nomadic tribe, and he would help us find them in the grasslands that surrounded the area. So next.
Christine, sorry, I'm just going to go back to this. Was this the bird trappers village?
Yes, this was all the bird trapper village.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about what bird trappers are. Would you like me to give a little introduction?
Please do.
Yeah. So traditionally, there used to be a lake not very far from here, a very shallow lake, not more than maybe 3 or 4 feet deep, but very wide, very, very wide. And exotic birds from all over the world would migrate to that lake and roost there. So there was a whole tribe whose entire lifestyle revolved around the birds near that lake. They would capture the birds, keep some for themselves to eat, sell the rest either for eating or as exotic pets. So we had flamingos, pelicans, all kinds of birds. That was what they did. But now, over the last maybe 50 years, since the wildlife authorities of India have kind of cracked down on, people picking up endangered animals and keeping them captive or eating them, this tribe has lost that livelihood. Now what they do is they offer their services as daily labor, daily wage labor. The same people that you're hearing about in the news who have lost, who are neither home nor at work because of the lockdown in India. This is that lot. These people look for jobs in the cities, including Ahmedabad or nearby bigger towns, to offer their labor service. But some of them are still in the habit of picking up birds and bringing them home for Friday night dinner. So that's the story. I got this from Bhagirath, your host, Christine, the prince of the Utelia Palace. I spoke to him this morning to understand a little bit about what these tribes do. And he was on his way hunting. Do you have any pictures in the slides to come of Bhagirath?
Yes, I do. So if we move forward a little bit. Yeah. So after My Man Friday is here we have him. He was driving the Jeep, and can we go to the next slide? I wanted to speak a little bit. I'm sorry. There was some video which we might have the opportunity to watch later, but I wanted to speak a little bit about my host, if you will.
Sure.
So my host is the descendant of the previous inhabitants of the palace. He is the Prince of Utelia. And he serves, if you will, I don't want to use the word ruler. He doesn't serve as a ruler. He serves as if you will, maybe a father figure to the village and the surrounding area. He is a man who is extremely well respected, and you can see that. I certainly saw that when we were on our Jeep ride. As we drove through the village, people stood up and smiled and nodded to him in utter respect. He is a man who cares for them. He helps them with their children's education and medication and solving local disputes. So people were aware that I was there and his guest. And as such, I was given the respect and if you will, that they would have given him. So that was a lovely opportunity for me to enjoy that area with such a man.
That's wonderful. Christine, which was the video you wanted to share of the village? Was it 943?
It might be. There's a picture. You first see a little girl on a swing.
Okay.
I think that's the way it starts.
I'm just going to play that for the audience because I guess that completes your story of the village as well, right?
Yes.
You did want to have it at this point because it makes sense here. Yeah, I have it here. Oh, sorry. There's a big clutter here, but yeah, now it's clean. Is this the one? No, this is not the one, right?
I can't see it.
No, okay. So maybe I'll share the videos a little later.
Yeah, a little later.
With the photos so that it's not interrupted. Yeah, got it. Sorry.
So no worries. Along the way to the nomadic Joth tribe, we picked up another individual who knew the exact location of this tribe for that day, who knew where their encampment was.
How did this work? In the morning, you get up, you get into the Jeep. Do they call someone or do they just randomly drive and pick this man up from somewhere? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, there's a lot of, I don't know how people communicate, but there was a lot of informal people know each other and there's a lot of connections and it was a little bit surreal, if you will, the way these interactions happened. So, we got in the Jeep, we drove for, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes or so, and we stopped on the side of the road, and here was this gentleman, and he, hopped into the Jeep with us and pointed the direction, and we were traveling in the desert on dusty roads. There was no way we would easily have been lost without him.
And this was semi-desert landscape, right? It was arid and dusty, and obviously they look like they know each other. Did you have any English conversation with them, or was it just smiles?
No, it was all smiles, and I don't know whether I think they were talking Gujarati. We went through some villages on our way to the tribes. Can you move a little bit forward, and then till we get to the nomadic tribes. There's just some of the images along the way. And then here we have ourselves arriving at the Kutch Jath nomadic tribe encampment.
I'm zooming in. I don't know if you can see that I'm zooming in.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, thank you. And you can see it's quite sparse. We have tents set up, and we have these wooden stakes where people draped their blankets and tied their livestock onto these. Now this, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. Can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
So we entered the encampment, and I will say, again, with that mindset of I am entering into someone's home, even if it is an outdoor area, I approached very cautiously with my camera, okay? So I didn't want to go in, rush in, start snapping pictures of people, whatnot. I really wanted only to take pictures only if I were invited. So my first few pictures you'll see are actually not of people, okay? And so this was to then allow me to get a sense of what how they would accept me into their home. Next page. And we'll talk a little bit about their embroidery. So just a little bit of background for this particular nomadic tribe. They are the Kutch, they are from the Kutch region, and that extends into Pakistan and Afghanistan, with the division of the countries that happened. I can't really say when that happened, but with the political divisions of the country, we had tribes that got separated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With the partition,
So
yeah.
the partition, yes.
Yeah, 1948.
Okay.
1947.
So now you have tribes that are, you know, individual tribes wandering in certain areas. Okay. So I did start, when I started taking pictures, I started taking pictures of what I thought might be safe. And so I took a picture behind, you know, a woman's back. And then I took a picture of this child. One of the things that I wanted to point out, and I think you might see it later on, is like the little small goats that were tied up to a post, this child was also tied to a post by his ankle, but he was quite content the entire time that I was there. Okay. Pardon? Yeah, you'll see him stand up later on, and you know, he could wander a little bit. He never cried. He was very content. So then I got daring enough to take a picture of some children, because I thought that might be a great start too. And this was the beginning of my interaction with this tribe. So I took a picture of these children as they were coming out from the field. The women and children are tasked with collecting vegetation to feed their livestock. So I took a picture here, and then I showed the children their image. All of this was taken with my phone. So I showed the image on my phone. Well, that was the beginning of something that I created in this village, because then everybody wanted to pose for me and would rush at me to see their likeness on the phone. So I had to be, it was then hard to get any candid photos, because I was always being photobombed by people. So, and one of the things that I'll always remember, the faces of the children, I think. Can we go to the next slide? this woman here, I have to say, this gentleman was insistent that we take her picture. I'm assuming it's a wife. It was somebody he obviously cared and respected a lot, and he was insistent. She did not, and it was you don't have to know the language to know that she did not want her picture taken.
But that's not a smell.
Yeah, but I was in a quandary of how to respect her, and yet knowing that I was in a male-dominated culture, and he was insisting that I take a picture of the two of them.
Teasing her?
Pardon?
Was he teasing her? Was he annoying
I think so. I think it was a show of love. He wanted to be pictured with this woman who he obviously had a lot of respect for.
Okay. That's now
here's another, and maybe Kaveri, you can talk a little bit about their dress, their adornment. This tribe is well known for their embroidery, which you can see the bodices of this woman's dress that's all hand done. We'll see more of that a little later.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because what you see here, where her sleeves and around the stomach, you can actually see a very cheap, synthetic, modern printed fabric, right? And the other patch that you see around her chest, that is in fact traditional old hand embroidery. It's a combination of thread work, mirrors, and patchwork. And if you see, it almost has some sort of Egyptian touch to it. You know, if you see the geometric and the human, almost human looking figures that appear if you look at it from a distance. The jewelry that you see, her nose, silver, right? That's the wealth. So they wear, similar to the family of the Tsar when he was in hiding, they actually wear all the jewelry that they own all the time. So whether it's the nose or the ankles or the bangles, they always wear everything, and that determines their standing. So the most ornately dressed are the richest of the nomadic tribe and probably in higher standing than the others. Yeah, and the man's turban also. I think when I went, maybe a year and something before you, I saw every other man wearing exactly the same scarf on his head. So obviously it's a signature of some sort. But these colors, you see the red, white, and black, those are the colors of this tribe. And in the old days, these were the colors chosen for the desert. So now they're nomads. They've migrated into the semi-desert. My friend Devika, she's actually working with a tribe in the south of India that actually came down the same path as they are taking, but they are 300 years ahead. They wear a very similar dress. They're called the Lambadis. But the colors that you see actually apply to the desert, because in a desert, if you're lost and if you're wearing these colors, there's a big chance that you'll be found.
So this was another woman where people were pointing at me and they wanted me to take her picture. So I assumed, you know, she really was totally disinterested in me. So, but I did it out of respect because I think they wanted her picture taken because she was somebody that they respected. These two little boys, I'm going to tell you, absolutely won my heart. And I still think about them today. So they were extremely happy. You'll see that in other slides. But I do want to point out, and it is more prevalent. You can see this in another slide of this one, the smaller little boy. He has bells on the pocket of his shirt, not this one, but the other one there. He has bells on his shirt, and then he also has, if you will, an anklet that has little bells on it. And I was told this is for the little ones. You know, they are in the middle of an arid desert. you can just scroll through some of these pictures, Kaveri, as I'm talking, but it is so that in case they get lost, they can be heard. Okay, so you just keep going. Here's my friend. You can see she's shying away. And here's the gentleman wanted to be taken in the family.
So maybe I should just say that these tribes are actually Muslims. Most of them are Islamic, and they're very protective of their women. So you can see the headscarf doesn't come all the way to the front. Traditionally, it did. It's impractical now. So they've actually, now the fashion is to not have it all the way to the front and covering the face. But normally, people going and trying to take photographs of these tribes without being in the company of somebody that these tribes recognize, just random people with cameras going and they actually throw things at you and they come to hit you. I've had a black eye because they didn't notice that I was actually with Bhagirat Singh ji when I went. So it's good to let your host go first and set the stage for your arrival. And it's also good that you were careful when you went in and didn't attack with your camera straight away.
Yeah. So just go, one of the things they wanted to show, and I guess this is part of their wealth and they're very proud of, is their animals. So they would run off and get a goat and come to me and ask me to take a picture with their goat and then show me and then ask for me to show them. So keep scrolling through.
Is that blonde hair?
She has a headscarf on. Yeah. You want to? Here's a woman preparing a meal on an open fire. So let me just stop here for a minute. This is somewhat out of order. When I arrived, one of the first things that happened was my host and the two elder men went almost immediately under a tent, and the men met. Okay, so I was out wandering the village by myself, or the encampment by myself, while they did their man business, and you'll see in a later photos where I was invited into the tent and invited to have chai with them. So let's just keep scrolling through because I know we're pressed for time here.
Oh, that's
here we go. Yeah. So I'm going to say that I joined the men for tea or chai, and it was the best chai I've ever had. So, after all the years and lovely hotels and on all my travels, this was by far the best chai that I ever had. I think it was goat milk, maybe. That was, or camel milk or something. But here's the child tethered to the stake. Happy as can be. So then then the women started to join us, because what happened then was the men were anxious to show us the women's embroidery handwork. So next slide. So here they asked for the women to go get some of the bodices that they were working on.
Were they selling them to you?
No. No, they were showing. They were only showing. Next. Next. So you can see the little mirrors and the detail. Next. This is all hand embroidered. So it was very impressive. Next. Kaveri, as the screen frozen, or? I don't know if others can hear me, but it seems like Kaveri is frozen and the screen is frozen. Hima?
Yes, that's right. I'm just reaching out to Kaveri.
Okay.
Out for a minute, sorry. Christine?
Yes, I am here.
Sorry, I got kicked out for a minute.
Okay. So can you advance the screen, please? Well, I'm seeing a picture of the embroidery.
Okay.
It's still frozen on that screen. I can still see your frozen image above
It's
yourself. Would you like me to share?
Yeah, Christine, maybe you can do that. That would be great.
Okay, bear with me, everyone. Oh, I can't share because the other participant is sharing.
Yeah,
So
I'm actually trying to. Is it still frozen?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, again, it's saying the same thing to me.
Yeah. I can share.
I think it's coming on now.
Okay.
Is it on?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry everyone for this.
Yeah, okay. So let's go through here. Just keep flipping. I do want to highlight this picture. So this picture right here. So what the women are playing with this little boy, but what he has, and Kaveri, you might be able to add some more detail. But this is like a mask that a groom would wear at a wedding. So he does not see his bride. I don't know when the unveiling happens, but they were demonstrating with this little boy and getting quite a chuckle.
Excellent.
Next, you can and so the women certainly just keep going.
Yeah, I'm going to keep
One
going.
of the things, these two boys as just absolutely won my heart. This is the picture where you can see the bells on the anklets, and then of course the bells on his shirt. I'm going to say that my lasting impression of this tribe was one that was very loving to each other. I saw people taking care of, I never got a sense of who those children belonged to, who was the mother. the men were very loving to the children, and the children hung on them and kissed them. And it was a very warm society. And I never worried about these children when I left. I knew that they were well cared for and that they were happy. You can see here a woman showing her bangles. This picture is interesting. If we could just go back, because I just will comment that, you know, I did read that the tribes they do not marry within their own clan, that they do reach out to the other clans and so they're not intermarrying. So here you can see two women with very distinct, it's almost like the one to the left has a lot of Afghanistan features, where the one to the right is maybe more Indian or you know, Pakistani. Or so here we were off on our way back. So just some images you can blow through there because I know that we're pressed for time. I thought this was a little interesting. Is what we, as we were approaching the palace again, there were men who were trying to fix a pipe coming out of the palace. So they were in the water, just jumped right in. I had the opportunity to go to the top of the palace to view some of the surrounding area. So you'll see there.
So where are we now? Christine? So it looks like we've arrived at the ruins of Lothal, the Indus-Valley civilization remains from 3,700 years ago, the oldest and richest society that existed in the world. And for the next 3 millennia, we had the greatest wealth, and we were the foremost in trade. And then there was a flood and a devastation, and the entire population of Utelia, of Lothal in those days, moved south, leaving the city behind. And because it was a flood, the entire area was covered in silt. It was only unearthed and is still in the process of people pulling it out. Archaeologists working on the site. I think it was a Bangalore boy from my city in the year 2008 who went and discovered that there's a whole lot of the Indus-Valley civilization that exists in Gujarat in this site. And they started to excavate, and they have a museum that has not been made very popular. So I'm running through these images of some of the wall carvings that were recovered, and some of them were recreated in plaster of Paris. So you can see that the residents of Lothal were animists. So you have a lot of imagery here of animals and nature. You can also see an old form of a bullock cart, the wheel, 3,700 years ago. Hasn't changed much now. So these were the weights that were used for measure. So obviously they were engaged in trade internally as well as with foreign countries. It was an economy of sustenance, and they started foreign trade more as an experiment or as a hobby, but later became very dependent on it because it brought them plenty of revenue. And they did very well also because of India's natural resources and the craftsmanship. In the manufacturing sector, we were among the foremost in the world for 3 millennia after this. Christine, I've started to go through some of your pictures in Lothal.
Yeah. So sorry.
No worry, I
Can you hear
actually
me?
took over from you. I hope you don't
Thank
mind.
you.
And I went
No,
through some of.
absolutely.
But you can tell us a little more about your arrival from existing tribe to the museum in the ruins of Lothal, which is the archaeological site that was recently rediscovered, right?
Yes, so I don't know what you were able to share, but this archaeological site dates back to around 3,700 BCE, and it was discovered in the 1950s. And it's hard to believe that in this semi-arid desert, that this was once a sea, the Arabian Sea came through there, and this was an important port, if you will, and with a dock and an acropolis, and it was a center for trade all along that.
What I was sharing, it was that for 3 millennia, we were the Indus, I wouldn't say we, but the Indus-Valley civilization, of which Lothal was a part, was foremost in the world in overseas trade, in the manufacturing sector especially, because we were so good with hand manufacturing, which is all they had before industrialization, that we were leaders in the world for 3 millennia.
Thank you. And this was some of the skeletons that were unburied. They did have a burial ritual that they subscribed to. So next.
Yeah, so this is a myth to bust, because most people think that India always burned the dead, but in fact it was only the higher classes, the Brahmins and the warriors at war, who burnt their dead. Everyone else was buried. And here, this is a very famous twin burial of 2 sisters who were buried together.
And then here you have the archaeological site. They were making mud bricks at the time. We have a drainage system. They did have potable water, and it was quite sophisticated for the time. I mean, if you think of what the Romans and the Egyptians were doing at the same time. Yeah, you can see that at this archaeological site here. So you have an opportunity to visit the village, to the museum, and then also the archaeological site itself. From there, I ended my trip at Black Buck Lodge. And the Black Buck Lodge is on the outskirts of a national wildlife sanctuary, the Deladar National Park. Did I pronounce that?
It's Bera Badar. Even I don't say it so correctly.
Okay.
Bera Badar.
One thing to note is that I was doing this trip out of season. So when I arrived, the park was closed. However, the grasslands are surrounded that area, and certainly animals don't know the perimeters of the park. So here, this was a very luxurious experience. Then I was taken on a Jeep safari around the perimeters of the park. And I think I just have video covering of the,
that's fine. So
this was my patio, and this is what I sat out, and there was water, and I could see birds. There are pelicans and herons and egrets, and this was on the Jeep safari. We passed through a town, took some pictures of the people in the village. They were all excited to see me. I was invited for chai in some of their homes, and so then, that ended the trip. Oh, I will say, to talk a little bit about some of the other animals that I was able to see. And that was, I did see a wild hyena on the road to the Black Buck Lodge. And then certainly all of the black bucks were everywhere. And then one day there was a wild pig running through between the cabins, if you will, of the Black Buck Lodge. So I was not keen to wandering on that the campus of the lodge in the evening, because I didn't know what I might encounter. But anyway,
I'm sharing some of your videos, Christine.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen. It seems to be loading, at least on my end. No, I'm not seeing them, which is okay. I think we're at almost at the end of our hour.
We're almost at the end, and maybe I should share with them on the slides that we have here. I thought I'd just share the itinerary that I had proposed to you at the time. So you arrived in the morning from Ahmedabad to Utelia, which is a 1.5 hour drive. Ahmedabad can be reached from most of the major airports in India. So Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, you can actually fly across to Ahmedabad in less than 2 hours. And then from there, you have 1.5 hours maximum driving time before you reach this 3,000 people village of Utelia. You meet the prince, Bhagirath Singh Ji, in the palace, and you then get straight away taken to neighboring villages where you see the bird trappers, the chief of the village, and then you come back to the palace and have dinner. The next day you visit the nomadic tribe and also the museum of the Indus-Valley Harappan civilization, the museum and the ruins. And the day after that, you head off after breakfast with the prince and his beautiful wife. And you find yourself in the Black Buck Reserve, which is another experience altogether. But I have to say that this experience was put together by our Gujarat expert and partner. Her name is Mamta Devi. I think she might have come and met you at the lodge.
Yes, she did.
Beautiful lady in a sari. Do you remember?
Yeah, yes, and she joined me on a jeep safari at the Buck Lodge.
That's wonderful. And also Bhagirath Singh Ji, who's the prince of Utelia, and like you rightly mentioned, he is like the godfather of that village, you know, because people, even though when India declared emergency, the government, the then Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, she declared all the royal families and their titles null and void. They were not allowed to have their titles or any money coming as royalty from the government, from the Federation of India, which was created with their blessing. Even though that happened in the 70s, the respect and the dependency that the people have for the royal families did not go away, especially in small places like Utelia. So every day the elders of the village go and sit in the courtyard, just sit quietly in what I call the shadow of Bhagirath Singh Ji, and they just feel secure being there and knowing that he's there. He also, he supports them whenever they have any kind of a family dispute, if there's any kind of,
It's 7 o'clock.
They have any kind of trouble legally or medically, he arranges medical care for them, small surgeries. He pays for them out of his own pocket. So his generosity is something that is so appreciated. They don't have courts like we have where you can actually take a dispute. He helps them with his reason to sort it out because he's educated and well-traveled. He's able to think like we would think and reason things out. So in that sense, I think it's beautiful that you got to see things from the point of view of Bhagirath Singh Ji, staying in his palace and then also visiting all the villagers and seeing what their life is like, that whole contrast, the nomadic tribes, and then to know the history through Lothal and now the wildlife. So That's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Kaveri.
Thanks, Christine. We have a few questions very quickly, but before we come to the questions, I just wanted to let everyone know who's signed in here that we have our next exploration, which is going to be hosted by me with my guest, Melissa Parkerton, a very familiar face in Bangalore who left not long ago, won many hearts before she left living here. She's going to be sharing her experience of Kashmir, which she grew up believing was the most beautiful place on earth. So you can imagine how hard it is for a place to live up to that kind of expectation. But Kashmir did. And we're going to be sharing that experience on the 29th of April. I'm just going to come to the questions. I think we have a couple, Christine. And I'm going to stop sharing so that you can see the question. Okay, it's a question by Subhash Agarwal. Is nomadic a word? Well, it's an English word in the dictionary, so I'm not passing that question on to you. So we are sharing the screen. And anything else you want to share, Christine, before we sign out?
No, I think just my takeaway from this trip was it was extremely immersive. It was very peaceful. I always felt safe and well cared for. I had, you know, the silence in the Utelia palace was just amazing. I know that people go to India to go to these ashrams, but you know, there's no need. You get that same sense of peace and tranquility there. You're awakened in the morning by the calls to prayer, and then at dusk again. And I had the opportunity one evening to go to the temple and participate in the evening prayers with the village. And that was a lovely experience as well, and felt very safe wandering in the village. So it was a very memorable experience trip. And I thank you for the opportunity to share.
That's really nice. Thank you so much, Christine. So I'm just gonna leave the audience with our last slide, which contains a video. Hopefully it will play, but while we sign out, I just want to say thank you very much for signing in. Sorry for the technical glitches. It's India, so we have power cuts. And thanks for being patient and watching. And stay in touch. You can see at the bottom of the screen, you have contact@culturings.com. So if you have questions even for Christine, you can pass them on to me and I can connect you with her. Otherwise, reach out to us for any other culture-related questions. And hopefully when things open up, you will travel with us like Christine did. Thanks for your time and trust, Christine. It means a lot to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless you. I'm going to play the video now. And goodbye, everyone.
She prayed to this shrine and it was in a form of a little kind of cover, like a cover. Bhakta Raval, the founder of the Sishodya family, who is an offshoot of the Goyals, who went from Balbipur.
So that brings us to the end. Christine, did that bring back some memories to you?
It certainly did.
Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you, covering.
Bye.
Bye-bye.